Hi ladies and gentlemen, Spenny here, and I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas this year and all the best for the new year. In case you didn't know, I went on holidays recently, the first one in nearly 4 years. The pandemic has obviously played a role in not going anywhere throughout that stretch, but this channel is so hard to escape from because I'm such a workaholic. I had small 10-day breaks in 2020 and 21, but this is the first proper holiday where I was away from the house for at least a fortnight. After completing the flat out review and started my annual leave from work, I used it to go on a long road trip across the east coast of Australia with my parents in their caravan while I stayed in the swag. And I had a giant planned checklist of everything I wanted to do, something I curated as far back as April. It's honestly a miracle I didn't test positive for COVID during this stretch. In Sydney, I went to the cricket, the T20 World Cup match, Australia versus New Zealand, which, based on the way the Aussies played that night, felt like day 5 of a test match. It wasn't very good, but at least I can say I went to the cricket at the SCG. And I also met Peter, aka Mini-Me, for the first time in person. An absolutely lovely bloke. We walked across the Darling Harbour and just talked non-stop for hours. Video games, our lives, you name it. Then after we left Sydney, we went to the Gold Coast to watch the supercars, the Gold Coast 500. We got a grandstand ticket alongside the beach where the second chicane is. Good spot. Got some cool looking footage of cars racing. And just before we left, I went to Warner Brothers Movie World, and despite how busy it was, I was able to go on all the rides I wanted the most more than once. And on the way back, we visited the Mount Panorama Motor Circuit in person and drove around it. That was completely surreal, even with the speed limit. And throughout the entire trip, I also took some photos and videos of places or landmarks that appeared in Forza Horizon 3. So when I review it in the future, I can use up what I captured and compare certain parts of the map to the real deal, including Byron Bay, Surfers Paradise, and the Sea Cliff Bridge. I'll visit Yarra Valley and the Great Ocean Road in the future, but I can't wait to use what I got when I review Horizon 3 in the future. Anyway, one of the other main reasons for the road trip was game hunting at different game stores across the country. One was the Gamesmen in Penhurst, Sydney. Walking in, what a store. One that I've literally spent thousands online in the past. Okay, the thousands was for an Xbox Series X bundle, still counts though. But this is the first time I've entered the store in person, and talk about a store that has every gaming audience covered. Current generation, accessories, steering wheels, board games, and tabletop games. One side it was like being in an EB Games with a lot more stock than usual. However, the museum down the back was the real attraction. It was hard to grasp for the first 10 minutes. I was here for at least an hour. It was so mesmerizing seeing so many old school titles in one place. Lots of box games in excellent condition, multiple versions of one system, particularly the Game Boy. And the order everything is placed is by generation, so the Odyssey, the Atari 2600 stuff is first, then it goes through to the 6th generation. This is how I want to display my games when I move into my house in the future. Not only a good way to keep away dust, but I want everyone who enters my own game room to feel the same way I felt when entering this museum for the first time. It's all over the place, but so organized at the same time. However, it's worth noting 80% of everything on the wall isn't for sale, and being brutally honest, even the ones you can buy, hell, even the whole store in general, the prices are quite steep. There are a few games I'd slip out and look at the cover and think, well, thank God I already have it in my collection. Some are understandable, like the Metroid Prime trilogy here, but this copy of Wii Sports Resort Bundle? Over $100? Even if the copy is sealed, that is ridiculous. I suspect the comic book guy from The Simpsons is secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes because these are the worst prices ever. Normally my strategy when buying games is to wait until they're at their cheapest, whether it's a generation that isn't in high demand, PS4 and Xbox One for example, or if there's a sale. But even with that strategy, the problem with going to game stores at the time I was visiting them, October, the chances of any sale are slim to nil. It was definitely worth visiting the Gamesmen just for the museum section alone. There aren't that many known places in Australia with retro games in flawless condition on display in one place like that. But being the thrifty type, I didn't get too much. I got this Retrobit wireless Sega Mega Drive controller, Formula 1 2001 on the PlayStation 2, and the Borderlands Handsome collection on the Xbox One. I'll go into more detail with what I got here at the end of the video. The next store I really wanted to visit was Super Retro on the Gold Coast. I actually arrived on a Thursday and apparently they closed at 9 PM on that day, so literally a couple of hours after setting up camp, it was the first thing I did when I was there. And compared to the Gamesmen, prices are really good here. Unlike eBay, I can look at the condition before purchasing, check if the manual is in the cover, and if needed, they clean all the discs. And they had everything. They didn't exactly have a museum section, but it was all for sale, and I could literally stay until midnight walking around looking at what's there, which I admit is stupid. I should be using that time to actually play the games. But I think that's one thing about shopping in person compared to online. You get enjoyment trying to find these games that might stand out, and they always trigger memories you have with them all these years ago. Either that or look at the more expensive stuff in person and imagine yourself having it in your collection. The woman at the counter and Emily from Team Retro, who I briefly met at PAX, also recommended that I go to the Carrara market because there was some game section there worth checking out. But I didn't have time, unfortunately, and it was too far away from where I was staying. But I really enjoyed my stay at the Gold Coast, the supercars, movie world, game hunting. I love to come back in 2023. I'm certainly visiting this place again if I do. And finally, after coming back home just before I returned to work, I went to Melbourne to watch the Matildas, the Aussie women's football team, against Sweden. A genuinely brilliant match, I might add. And to meet up with Square Eyed Jack. We even did a game testing video together, which is on his channel. Check it out if you haven't yet, it's in the video description. Then after filming, we went to the Hunt and Antique store in Bayswater. Now there's a lot of different, well, antiques. It's a big place full of old stuff. But the spot we paid primary attention to was the video game section, and holy shit. Seriously, the footage you're watching doesn't do it justice. It is the largest pile of games in one area I've ever seen in person. It's ridiculous, in a good way. You are literally surrounded by thousands of games of all generations, and while you flip through trying to find what you want, if you look behind, it's just another complete shelf of games. Unbelievable. I remember promising Jack multiple times that there'd be thousands. I think I might have been under-exaggerating. Unlike Super Retro, any scratched discs aren't cleaned up. It's not easy to find something in very good condition since it's such an untidy setup. But it is part of the thrill trying to find what you want, where this many games breeds more opportunities after all. Though the sellers additionally have glass cabinets with the more desired and expensive stuff inside them, so they know which games are worth value. But overall, depending on the generation you're trying to collect for, prices are reasonable. And it's a place I would go if I was driving around Melbourne one day and had a giant game collecting wish list and want to tick off so many in one day. However, this day specifically, I knew not to get too carried away since I already spent so much in New South Wales and Queensland literally just weeks earlier. And here it is, everything I bought between October to November 2022. As you can tell, I went Xbox crazy. It's because I got a Series X last year, so almost by default. The Xbox 360 version of a third-party 7th generation title is better than the PS3 version in terms of capturing gameplay. It looks sharper, and without the HD CP protection, it's easier to set up. Every original and 360 title you see in this haul are all backwards compatible with the Series X, and dirt cheap. But let's go in gaming generation order. First, the wireless Retrobit Mega Drive controller, which I plan to use for all the Mega Drive compilations I have on modern systems. I even tested it on my laptop during the holidays since I had the Sega Mega Drive Classics installed on it. Let's just say I had dozens of video games to keep me entertained during that holiday. For the PS1, I got Formula 1 2000. I really like PS1 F1 games. I don't know why. Maybe because I like PS1 games and F1, and this was the period when I was first exposed to both these things. Which might also explain why I also got Formula 1 2001 for the PlayStation 2. Also part of the series developed by Psygnosis, who additionally made the Wipeout games. This one comes with a bonus DVD of a summary of the 2000 F1 Championship. I'm kind of interested to do a review of F1 2001 specifically because there's a lot of research how this game was made, and having both console versions, it'd be fun to compare them together. Another PS2 title I got was MX vs ATV Unleashed. I loved motocross games, especially back in the day when I rode a motorbike nearly every weekend, as well as currently having a motorbike license. And this was one of my favorites. A friend of mine had it on the PS2, and this is what we put the most hours into together, so it's good to finally have my own copy. It was also available on the original Xbox at Super Retro, but it was twice as much, and I'm used to the control scheme on the PS2 version. I did, however, get for the OG Xbox Mercenaries Playground of Destruction because it's been requested by you guys for years. I heard it's really good, and I got the Xbox version specifically because it's backwards compatible on the Series X, which means the footage quality when I review it looks stunning. It really does. Back to the PS2 games, at the antique store I got the Sonic Mega Collection Plus. I already reviewed it in 2017, but the copy I used I was borrowing off a friend and I just wanted my own because it's a cool Sonic compilation. I have to say, Sega compilations are probably the only thing I like to get for the sake of collecting. I should probably review all of them in a single video since I have so many. I also got a couple of WWE games at the antique store. SmackDown vs. Raw, which after playing it again, I've now come to the conclusion that it's my #1 favorite wrestling game. Certainly the one I put the most hours into than any other, especially in the late 2000s. And SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, which I also heard is one of the best, and the last in the main series to 100% focus on the PlayStation 2. Pro wrestling is something I've never talked about on this channel actually, but I've really gotten back into it after getting a Kayo Sports subscription this year, which includes WWE and their pay-per-views, so there's a fun fact for you guys, I'm a wrestling fan. And finally, last on the PS2, since nearly every Patreon suggestion leader is a game developed by Reflections over the last year, Driver 2, Driver 3, Stuntman, and currently leading at the time of this video is Driver Parallel Lines, and I was lucky to find this copy at Super Retro. I considered buying it off Steam, but I wasn't sure if it works since older PC games usually have a hard time running on Windows 10, and critically, the PS2 version is considered the best one. It's also why I got Driver San Francisco when I saw it at the antique store. Since I've come this far into the series, it'll only be a matter of time when Patreon supporters will suggest this game too. And speaking of racing open world games, I've already reviewed Midnight Club Los Angeles, but like the Sonic Mega Collection, the copy I used to review the game, the same friend and wanted to get my own copy of. Max Payne 3, again, same thing. Gears of War 2, I already had the first and third Gears of War titles in my collection, and I thought I might as well get the second one as well. Borderlands, I got the Handsome Collection from the Gamesmen when it was on sale, and that was a bit of an impulse buy. And since I didn't have the first Borderlands and it was only $5, I essentially got almost the entire franchise for $14. Plus, they're considered open world games, they're also long overdue for a review, and if I like them enough, I'll get Borderlands 3 in the future. And finally, the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I almost forgot to mention this one. I played a little bit of the first Spyro on the PS1 growing up, but nowhere near as much as Crash Bandicoot. I really want to give the Spyro games a proper go, and this is the easiest and cheapest way to do it. This is almost like a sequel to the game collection video, not just to show off what I have, but talk about my personal gaming interests and my mindset when buying a game. And this video is that mindset being played out in the real world inside an actual game store. Honestly though, it's just a fun video to show you guys what I've been up to over the last few months because I've done so much. So that's why my last review took such a long time to make. Thank you guys again for your patience. But I'm back and hard at work on the next one, which at the time of this video is Burnout Paradise. I'm hoping to release it close to its 15th anniversary, then Driver Parallel Lines, so basically driving open world games, the two most popular genres on this channel put together. Thanks everyone on Patreon, including Bibbs, Brittleback, Cooper Munn, Darcy McIntosh, David Myers, Eric Barboza, Ian Walker, Indy DM, Mike Camilli, Mike Ball, Thomas Rosendale, Ulysses, and VXL. God damn it, why do my supporters have to have such hard names to pronounce? Also, thank you to everyone watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell, support on Patreon, follow on Twitter, Facebook, and speak to you soon.